Welcome to the Beyond Recovery Project podcast, the podcast that delves into the incredible journeys of individuals who've overcome serious illness and adversity. Get ready to hear their stories of strength, courage and hope. Hi there, my name is Sara Crosland. I am the founder and director of the Beyond Recovery Project, a non-profit community interest company which supports the physical and mental health and well-being of brain tumour survivors. I decided to set up this podcast series to share inspirational stories of people who've overcome illness and adversity as a way of motivating and inspiring others. But before I do that, I wanted to share with you a little bit about my own story. So in May 2018, I was diagnosed with a 3 centimetre vestibular schwannoma or acoustic neuroma brain tumour. Just a few weeks later, I was given a second diagnosis of sarcoidosis. This is an autoimmune condition, but clearly for me at that time, the brain tumour was taking priority. I was given the option of surgery to deal with this because of its size and the position of it and the fact it was causing brainstem compression and a whole load of symptoms that went along with that. 3 weeks before my surgery was due to take place, the tumour hemorrhaged. I had a trip to 3 different hospitals, ending up at Salford Royal, where I was, after a few days, discharged and sent home to recover, to get my strength back ready for the actual surgery to remove the tumour. So that took place as planned on the 12th of May 2018. It was a 9-hour surgery. And whilst it was successful in removing 100% of the tumour, it left me with grade 4 facial palsy, invasive tinnitus, loss of hearing and balance function on my left side, double vision, very blurred vision, numbness to my mouth and my face. And many of these symptoms I still suffer with today, along with incredible fatigue, which can be quite debilitating at times. Now, back then, I naively thought that I'd have surgery, the tumour would be removed, and that would be the end of it onwards, and could just put it behind me and move on in life. But I soon began to realise that that wasn't the case at all. Recovery for me was very much a case of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and it was really quite frustrating at the time. Little by little, though, I did start making some progress, and I decided that I was going to do whatever I could to reclaim as much of my life as possible, because at the end of the day, I think it was a realisation for me that all those things that I'd had on my bucket list for years and years and never got round to doing, I think many of us are guilty of this. We always think we've got bags of time, but actually none of us know what's around the next corner. And so I very much set about ticking off lots of those things. I managed to get back into running probably about 6 weeks after my surgery, when I'd had my checkup from the neurosurgeons and given the all clear. Prior to that, I'd already been out on a push bike, which I told, might well be impossible, but I was not going to be told what I could and couldn't do. And similarly with running, I went back out, I think the day after that appointment, and started training for a race for life, which I'd already entered, which would take place 2 weeks later. It was not my best performance by any stretch of the imagination, but I was just so glad to be back out there. And every couple of weeks I tried to set another, pass another milestone, if you like. So a couple of weeks after the race for life, I then went back into the mountains in Snowdonia and did a hike up to Egon through Devil's Kitchen, which can be a bit of a challenging route at the best of times, particularly when you're down to like 50% balance function. But I did it and I was so pleased. As tired as I was just made up that I'd managed to sort of tick that box as well. And so my stories continued from there, really. I find a challenge, I take it on, and then I worry about the details later. Because if we just concentrated on the details straight away, we'd never do anything. And I think that's something I was very guilty of prior to my diagnosis. So the next big challenge I did was a skydive, followed that up by going back to the Alps, which was a bit disastrous because I was really struggling with fatigue at that point. So that set me back quite a bit psychologically, because I'd kind of thought I was on a bit of a roll with it, but clearly my body was saying, no, you're not. But I persisted. I got back into running. I went back to the Alps and did some climbing out there. And then about a month or so later, I was given the opportunity to go and climb Toubkal in Morocco, which is just the most amazing experience. And the Beyond Recovery project has very much stemmed from that trip, because whilst I was out there and once I was stood on that summit, I decided that I was going to go back one day and I was going to take a group of other people who'd been on a similar journey to me, just so they could feel how empowering it was to sort of get up there and reclaim that part of your life. In early 2020, I decided to enter a 100-kilometre ultramarathon. It's something I'd never done before. The furthest I'd ever run was a half marathon. I'd not even done a marathon. And here I was contemplating 100 kilometres in one go. And so I started training with the help of a coach, John Fern of e3coach.com. And it went from there, but unfortunately, as we all know, 2020 didn't quite go to plan, and that race was postponed, if you like, due to COVID. So it would be a whole 12 months before that event took place. And then once I completed it, the kind of ultra endurance bug had very much bitten. I just longed to do anything that pushes those limits of what you think is physically and mentally possible. Throughout my own journey, I've been receiving messages from people around the world who have had the same or a very similar diagnosis, wanting to know how they can begin to make progress in their recoveries as well. It's really important to kind of show people that this can be done in spite of the diagnosis that we've had. There were so many things I was led to believe I wouldn't be able to do again. And I find that so often that is the case. It's someone telling us that we won't be able to do things that puts limitations in our mind. I've become all about doing the complete opposite. And if someone tells me that I can't do something, I think I'll just decide that for myself. I'll give it a go. And what's the worst that can happen is that they're right, So I won't ever back down from a challenge. In October 2020, I published my story, Sickbed to Summits, which documented my journey from obviously being diagnosed through surgery and part of my recovery to the point where I was stood on Jebel Toubkal summit. And, the feedback that I had from people who read it was just great and motivated me to keep going with many of the challenges that I had planned. And they've just got more and more extreme. In 2022, I decided I was going to run from Land's End to John O'Groats. It kind of went wrong the first time, but if you don't try, you never know. And it turned out, I think it was a combination of fatigue along with balance issues because of the impact of my surgery, which caused an injury and forced me to withdraw. But I went back the following April and completed that journey. It didn't go as I planned it, but I was so glad to have completed that journey rather than accept defeat, if you like. Since then, I've spent more time back in the mountains. I have recently come back from an expedition in Nepal, and just a few weeks ago, I was out in Morocco fulfilling that dream of taking a group of brain tumour survivors to that same summit. It was the most incredible experience that you can ever imagine, to have worked with this group of people who had all been diagnosed with brain tumours. 5 had vestibular schwannomas, the same as me, and one lady had a petroclival meningioma, which had caused her all manner of problems. The group were just absolutely phenomenal. The struggles that they experienced from day to day with fatigue, with balance issues, with hearing loss, and they got up every single day and just kept putting one foot in front of the other until we reached the summit. And it's quite a good metaphor, I think, really, for recovering from an illness like this. You can't always see the top, but if you just keep taking one step at a time, you'll eventually get there. And it's not only the achievement of reaching that summit, but when you look back at the whole process and that journey that's got you there, it's absolutely amazing. And this is why I set up the Beyond Recovery project, because, there was an awful lot of support for me around the time of my diagnosis and during the time of my surgery and the immediate aftermath of that. However, as time goes on and those hospital appointments become less and less frequent, so does the support. It kind of drops off a little bit. And people just assume, particularly with low-grade brain tumours, that you've had it removed, you're back to normal. And that really isn't the case. There are a lot of misunderstandings around recovery, and I think it's very hard for people to understand how you feel and what you're going through on a day-to-day basis when they don't experience it for themselves. And that is the beauty of the Beyond Recovery project. So initially I set it up just to carry out this one dream of mine of getting everyone to tube cal. But it kind of snowballed from there. And as a result of that, we now have walking groups spread across the country, and we meet quite regularly and go on easy walks. They're all free to attend, and it's just that first step for someone who's wanting to reclaim that little bit of their life and get back out there again and meet others who've been in a similar situation. Because what I found frustrating during my recovery was going out with people and having to explain that, I'm going to find this bit of the walk a bit challenging, and you kind of feel like a stuck record. But when we're all going through the same thing together, there's no need to explain, and that's the beauty of the Beyond Recovery project. We're all there, everybody knows what everyone else is feeling and experiencing, and we can just get on and enjoy the walk without the need for judgment or explanations or anything like that. Similarly, we organise wellbeing weekends, and these are a great opportunity again for people to spend a couple of days together without the worry of being judged in any way, without having to explain symptoms to people. And it's an opportunity for individuals to come along and try out different holistic therapies. The last one we did, we had a lady who ran a Tai Chi yoga class, which was great. And we also had somebody who was doing reflexology, massage and aromatherapy, which is, just wonderful for everybody, as well as nipping outside for a cold water dip in a nearby stream. So it was, a great weekend. Everybody really enjoyed it, and we're looking forward to the next one in a few months' time. And our other aim is to hold one international challenge every year. So obviously we've just come back from Morocco and the Tube Cal Challenge. We are currently planning our 2025 challenge, which will be a 100-kilometre trek through the Sahara Desert. Now, none of this would be possible at all without the support that we've had from our volunteers and our fundraisers, who've been absolutely amazing and working so hard to get the funds in and make these events happen. So over the next few months, I'm going to be sharing stories of some of those individuals who have benefited from the services that we provide at the Beyond Recovery project. And I'm sure that you will find them absolutely inspirational. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Beyond Recovery Project podcast. Please share this podcast with your friends and help us continue our mission to inspire and empower.